Tromaville, and welcome to episode 5 of Talkin Troma with your host, me, Zack, the show where me and a guest take a look at a Troma movie, grow into better citizens of Tromaville, and then learn about that movie. Later, we'll pair it with a non-Troma movie for a fantasy double feature. Before we take a bite in today's film, let me introduce my guest. He's a filmmaker, directed My Bloody Banjo. He's occupied Cannes with the Troma Team and has worked on the Return to Nuke Em High Series as well as Shakespeare's Shitstorm. I would like to introduce to you Liam Regan. Did I say that right? Is it Regan or Regan?
Regan will be great. Yeah.
God damn.
Howdy, everybody.
Hey.
Tromaville.
So before we really kick things off, there has been a loss in the Troma family recently with Blade Braxton, who also worked on the Nuke Em High movies with you and Shakespeare's Shitstorm and occupied Cannes. He's a huge Troma fan. So right from the beginning of this podcast, you reached out to me. You're like, you got to get Blade on the show, as well as a few other Tromaville citizens. Sadly, I never got that chance. So I thought it'd be fitting on this episode if you had any stories for Blade you would want to share.
Yeah, so my first experience on a Troma set was in the summer of 2012. I've always been a massive Troma fan, and I'm from the UK, Sheffield, Buffalo, Niagara, to work on Return to Nuke Em High. And on one of the last days there, I met Blade for the first time, and I heard him talk, and I'm like, I recognize that guy's voice from somewhere. And he then told me that he actually hosted the WrestleCrap podcast. He's one of the co-hosts of the WrestleCrap podcast. I'm like, oh my God, that's so weird that, I've traveled to Buffalo, Niagara of all places, and I met a guy I've been listening to since like 2006. And, Blade was also an author. He released the WrestleCrap book, which I also had, prior to knowing him. And, we really hit it off. We occupied Cannes together in 2013. We shared a house together in Cannes, France, and we just had the best times. And what I love with Blade, like myself, we were just lifelong Troma fans, and I guess we were just living out our childhood dreams together. And Cannes was a great experience. And then I made a movie called My Bloody Banjo, and when I had a screening in Kansas City, I traveled there, stayed with Blade. He put me up in his bed. We traveled around Kansas, and he fed me loads of really bad American fast food, which was quite the experience. And then we did Shakespeare's Shitstorm together, and we had a hostel in Long Island, and it was pretty fucking dangerous, but we had the greatest time. And it's really sad that, we've lost Blade. I mean, I spoke to Blade every day online. We were like kindred spirits in a way. And, he flew out on his own dime to help me with my second movie, which Lloyd's producing. And, I was just so thankful that I was able to introduce Blade to a lot of my, to all my British friends. And he is a major part of the film, which I'm very thankful to, have that. It's still a shock. It's just been a week now, and my life's never going to be the same again. And this whole week I've just been up and down. Like in one breath, I feel euphoric that I spent the best times with Blade. And Blade was the kind of guy that he understood the obscure Troma trivia. He wasn't just a guy that, saw The Toxic Avenger and knew of Lloyd Kaufman. He's the guy that, will talk about Fatty Drives the Bus, or we'll talk about, I don't know, just all the kind of obscure Troma stuff that no one else really knows about. And, and also we were massive Troma DVD collectors. So we both had the first editions of the first 4 Troma releases from 97 and then the reissues. And he used to be so anal about getting the inlays for all the Troma DVDs. He wanted to have an inlay. He'd oh man, and he had the Kabuki Man lenticle cover when it came out with the hologram. And yeah, man, he was, seriously, man, he was my best friend. And it sucks that we've lost someone like Blade, within the Troma team. But, his legacy will live on. I mean, he's in Return to Nuke Em High. He's in hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm as the Midnight Rose. And, he's left so much behind. And I think one thing about Blade, like, he did whatever he wanted to on his terms. And, he was such a chill guy. In fact, this time last year when the pandemic started, we started going through our Troma DVD collection, and I remember watching The Killer Condom and like saying to Blade, how the hell did they get rights to some of these tracks in The Killer Condom? And we're thinking, you know what? It just kind of probably went over Michael Herz's head, and it just kind of just hit on DVD. But me and Blade were talking about started a Troma podcast together where we'd be reviewing films and everything. And then when I saw your podcast, Zach, I mentioned to Blaze, like, oh my God, Zack Bynes, who worked on Poltergeist and everything. And is it Atom, the Zombie Killer?
Adam, the Amazing Zombie Killer.
That's right. Yeah, man. I remember when that came out. Was that like 2008, 2009?
Next year's the 10-year anniversary.
Oh, man. Time goes. But like, I was telling Blade, it's like, oh, this Zack dude, I've just been chatting to him and he's a really cool guy. And, Blade was like, right on, man, I need to get on that. And, it's sad he's not going to, it's sad that he's not going to have the opportunity to like get on your podcast. And it's sad that you've never met him, Zach, because I think you'd really love him. And, like a lot of Troma people, I always see it like, people travel from all over the world to work on a Troma set. And to me, they are the best kind of people, right?
Yeah,
because
it is.
I feel a lot of them were like the outcasts in high school, like we like the uncool things, which would be kind of considered as cool now because of geek culture becoming, in the mainstream. But yeah, man. So I fucking love Blade to death, and he's gonna be sincerely missed by everybody. And yeah, man, let's dedicate this episode to Blade.
Yeah, this episode is definitely dedicated to Blade. And on that, one of our friends, Bjarni, who's going to be on an episode of the show, cut together a little interview with Blade that you could watch the full thing on the Troma YouTube channel. But I'm going to play a little clip just on Blade talking about his intro to Troma movies.
Why am I in Tromaville, man? It started in 1985. I stumbled upon my dad. I was 10 years old, and he had rented Blood-Sucking Freaks, and I was completely blown away. It was like, whoa, this is a different world, man. And then my mom, of course, came down and chastised my dad. Oh, Paul, you shouldn't be watching this. And before I know it, me and my dad, we rented Toxic Avenger. And from there, man, it wasn't too long until I saw Class of Nuke Em High, which was a movie that really kind of changed my life. When you're a kid, you always want to join a gang. You want to be with somebody. And, some people identify with Jedis or Starfleet from Star Trek. I wanted to be a Cretan when I grew up, and flash forward, 2012, I ended up being a Cretan. In Return to Nuke Em High, man, it was a great experience, and now here I am. I'm back for more now as a veteran of Tromaville. Since 2002, I've helped run WrestleCrap.com, one of the longest running pro wrestling websites.
Yeah, this episode's dedicated to Blade Braxton. But let's lighten the spirits, because just from what I've seen about Blade, he wanted Troma podcast to be sad. He'd want us to share our love for Troma. So I want to know how you got into Troma movies.
Sure, man. I'm 35 years old. I was born in 1985. And I guess my first kind of experiences with Toxic Crusaders, because in the UK, in like 92, 93, like Captain Planet was the big thing.
Yeah, same in the States.
Yeah, well, yeah. So like Captain Planet, and then Toxic Crusaders was like really huge over here. Like you could buy the action figures, etc. So I had a Toxic figure, and then over here we have something called Sky TV, which I think over in America you've got guys got cable.
Yeah.
And I know you guys have got a channel called USA Network, and you guys had USA Up All Night, and I'm familiar with that. Well, over in the UK, we had a channel called Bravo, which is very different to the Bravo that probably exists right now. But Bravo in the UK was essentially a cult channel. You know, they screened the Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone, and they screened Twin Peaks and ECW Wrestling. You know, it was a really awesome channel. And we used to get the Sky TV guide every month posted through the door. And I remember seeing like a 3-page spread for something called Troma, and then Troma season. I'm looking at these like posters and I remember there was a still photo from the Toxic Avenger 3 where Toxie's kind of like, he's like in the ground. It's when the devil goes through the 5 stages of doom with him. And I'm like, man, that looks so cool. And in fact, it looks like the Toxic Crusaders, you know. And then one day in 1996, I went into my local Blockbuster Video. And I mean, over in the UK, I think it's a little different to what it is in America, where you know, Blockbuster in America, you know, it's kind of like franchised, and I know that they didn't carry any Troma films, but in my local Blockbuster Video, they actually carried an X-rental copy of The Toxic Avenger Part 2, and I'm like, oh shit, that is Toxie, and that is what I saw on the Sky TV guide, and I was 11 years old, so my mom bought me Toxic Avenger Part 2, and wow, it was like a live-action cartoon coming to life. And you know, this is prior to seeing the first Toxic Avenger. This was me popping my Troma cherry with the Toxic Avenger Part 2. And you know what, man? I just fell in love with the ultra violence. I mean, I grew up loving Rick Mail, who's known for like Young Ones and Bottom and Drop Dead Fred, and his kind of physical violence in a lot of the British sitcoms he were in, kind of like. You know, I saw a parallel between that and Troma, and I just kind of fell in love with how, I guess, you know, extremely violent and offensive the humor can be seen and, you know, taken. And I'm like, this is great. And from then, you know, in 1996, Troma actually restarted its brand in the UK. And, you know, you could buy, the first 3 Troma films in the UK was The Toxic Avenger, Class of Nuke Em High, and The Monster in the Closet. I think there was like at least 28 VHS tapes that were released over here, and you know, I was just collecting them. And then Bravo started their new Troma season with a 10-minute interlude called Troma Basement. With it was kind of like it's like the British version of Tromaville Cafe. You know, we had Miss Troma UK, and you know, I just became obsessed with Troma. It was just one of those things that, you know, over the years, just, you know, kind of stuck with me. And I remember seeing Romeo and Juliet premiering on UK TV in 1997. And oh my God, dude, like, Romeo and Juliet is my favorite movie of all time. Not just my favorite Troma movie, my favorite. Like, that movie struck a chord with me. The characters, the soundtrack, everything about Romeo and Juliet I was obsessed with. And obviously, you know, it goes to show where the talent went with James Gunn, you know.
Yeah.
You know, a bit, I don't know, man. Like, so, you know, 12 years old, obsessed with Romeo and Juliet. I used to, I didn't sell them, and don't tell Lloyd this, but I used to bootleg Troma movies, and to spread the love around my high school, I just like, yo, you need to see this.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, good. Well, I don't feel as guilty now. But yeah, man, you know, so like Troma, you know, was a huge influence, and I always wanted to make films, and I guess, you know, reading Lloyd's book, All I Need to Know About Filmmaking, I Learned from the Toxic Avenger, and then importing Troma DVDs from the States. And back then, you know, the customs would actually seize the Troma DVDs. I'd have to, like, you know, apply to get them back and say, hey, you know, they're fine, you know, but they probably thought that they were, I don't know. But you see in the UK, like Cannibal Films and that band. So when I imported something like Cannibal the Musical, they must have thought, oh, this must be the Cannibal Holocaust or something, you know? So sorry I went on a tangent there, Zach.
No, it's a pretty like unique Troma experience. Like in the States, I feel a lot of it is we had USA Up All Night, or saw Joe Bob Briggs, you know, talking about, you know, one of the weird Troma sequels, maybe Toxic Avenger 2, something like that. Everyone, you know, especially at my age in Colorado, Cannibal the Musical was their first one in there. So I'm just interested to hear, you know, the Troma Basement. Did you watch Troma's Edge TV when that came on TV over there?
Yes, that was like in the year 2000 on Channel 4. Troma's Edge TV would play at like 1 a.m. in the morning. But like, what was cool about that is that we got the Terra Firma UK premiere in like 2000, and I think it came on DVD maybe 2001, early 2001, or maybe late 2000. But I was just so surprised that we got it so quickly. And, you know, it was really weird, the jump between Romeo and Juliet and Terra Firma. I thought it was kind of jarring because Terra Firma is like really extreme compared to Romeo and Juliet, right? And it's so like self-referential, and it just kind of became a new era of Troma. Like that and Citizen Toxie, like it is in its own like bubble in a way.
Yeah.
But no, man, Troma's Edge TV, fantastic. You know, being 16 years old, it felt like Troma was kind of getting big, you know, quite like mainstream big from a UK's perspective, because Channel 4 is like a massive channel over here. So it's great for them to get that exposure. And yeah, man, you know, just imported all the DVDs. I met Lloyd in 2002 when I was 17 years old at this like Troma retrospective in Leicester. And, you know, ever since, you know, we stayed in touch, and I've always wanted to make films. And, you know, over the years, yeah, I went to Buffalo, Niagara, and, you know, the rest is history.
It's kind of funny how long you've been involved, like just like into Troma, like the same years I was like super into Troma too, where later just through discussion I found out you also used to post on the Troma message boards all the time. And like that was like the homepage of my AOL computer. Whenever I would, you know, fire up the computer, it'd be right to the Troma message boards just to talk, you know, talk shit about Troma movies all day and be like, oh, I love them.
Yeah, completely, man. And, you know, if you think about it, I mean, especially here in the UK, all my friends were into kind of like whatever was cool at the time, right? And Troma was never the in thing, it was always something else. So to me, the Troma message board was a place where I could, like, you know, meet like-minded individuals. And, you know, a little did I know that I'd meet, you know, Biani, you know, on the set of Return to Nuke Em High. And they're like, oh, shit, you know, I remember that guy, you know, it's such a small world in a way. And it's great that, like, our Troma fandom has stayed with us because, you know, I've gone through fads as a kid, and I'm sure you have gone through fads as well. But Troma is just something that's always stayed with me. It's part of my life now, you know?
Yeah, it's embedded in my DNA. So, yeah, I'm one of my goals is I want to try to get all the people who used to chat on those message boards, because we were all like, everyone on those message boards were diehard Troma fans. So I want to, if you're listening to this, because obviously Troma's still stuck with you, please reach out to me, and I want to get you on the show, because we would talk about Toxie and Lloyd's movies, but then like whenever Troma would put something weird on DVD, it's like, who picked up Night Beast yet? And it's like, who picked up Actium Maximus? And, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like, who picked up Alien Blood?
And then we'll be like, oh, I haven't bought that one yet. It was great.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, good times, man. Really good times. And you know that the early days of the internet just felt so special. Like, I remember Troma.com was the first website I ever visited when we had the internet in like 97. And I remember like just how it was like the original Troma website had like that background, like the green Toxie face for the background, and then it had like an image. I remember it was like Tromaville Mall, spelled Maul.
Yeah,
dude, yeah, man. And you know, I remember when Troma used to do all those like 1 cent DVD sales on 99-cent DVD sales, and this connects to Sucker, by the way, but I remember ordering the Toxic Avenger on DVD. Must have been like it was 1999, right? And it never got delivered. Like, it was good like 6 months and nothing came. It's like, and those were the early days of the internet where you have to actually, you know, use a credit card, and you're just kind of taking a gamble. Am I ever going to receive this?
Yeah.
Anyway. like something must have happened because one day, like 8 months later, I had this massive box turn up, on my doorstep to me, and I'm like, oh, it's from Troma, but why is it a big box? And not only did I get the Toxic Avenger on DVD, but they gave me for free like 10 more DVDs, a Troma t-shirt, which I still have, and a VHS of The Digital Prophet, which isn't that good of a movie. But, they gave me Bloodsucking Freaks, Cryuncle, Combat Shock, Sucker the Vampire, so many. And it's like, as a 16-year-old who has just got his first DVD player, it was just like fucking Christmas, man. It was so cool.
And especially those early Troma DVDs where it's like, oh man, I can't wait to do the tour of Tromaville, and then you wear out your button in the costume department.
Oh man! Or even better with the TIT, the trauma intelligence test, where if you got an answer correct, you get some boobs, and if you got it wrong, it's going to be a clip from Beware Children at Play or something. Those are the days.
And you can never lose because you're like, what movie is that? It's not in my collection yet.
Oh man. Good
and
times.
then you ended up working on Return of Nuke Em High series. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. Well, Lloyd came to London. The Prince Charles Cinema in London, in Leicester Square. That's kind of like the place where Lloyd goes and they screen Troma movies. It's like, I think in the US, you guys have got, you did have the Alamo Draft House.
Yes.
It's kind of like that, but it wasn't like a franchise. It was just like one cinema. But anyway, he was screening, I think it was Father's Day and Toxic Avenger and Class of Nuke Em High. It was like a triple bill. And Lloyd said, hey, we're remaking, the Class of Nuke Em High. And, it's going to have 2 female leads. And I'm like, and this was like 2012. So I was... 2012, I was maybe 25, 26. And when he mentioned that, I'm like, I need to get my ass over there no matter what. So I just kept pestering Lloyd afterwards. Lloyd, do you have a script yet? Do you have a script yet? And I remember reading these first drafts of Return to Nuke Em High. And I was like, oh shit, this is like going to really happen. And, I drank for a long time. So from the age 16 to 24, I drank heavily, and then when I quit drinking, shit together, and so I was sober as a judge. I'm like, oh fuck, but I was too scared to travel anywhere, right? Because I just used to just drink in my own town and go to the local clubs, and now I'm thinking about jumping on a plane on my own to Buffalo, Niagara, to people that I've never met before. And anyway, I did it anyway because my love for Troma was so strong. So, I flew to Buffalo, Niagara, got picked up by Alex Gordon, who was one of the production executives. And everyone was staying in a funeral home. And this funeral home was about 60 people, 2 showers. And yeah, man, it's exactly how the making of documentaries portray. However, the food was great. You can't, it wasn't, there was no cheese sandwiches. I didn't have to defecate in a paper bag,
The food on Poultrygeist was actually pretty good as well. I don't think Lloyd wants that secret out of the bag. I know the food was all free, but it was actually pretty good. But on that movie, whenever they served fried chicken, nobody wanted to eat it.
I can imagine, dude.
So they ended up using most of that chicken for props.
I think when you're on a Troma set, your expectations are so low that anything's like a bonus in a way.
Yeah.
Because you've been led to believe by the books and the documentaries, and parts of it, are true. And to be honest with you, Zach, whenever I saw the Poltergeist Poultry Motion documentary, I'm like, this is the most miserable set I've ever seen, and I felt so sorry for you guys on that production. It seemed really harsh compared to, like I said, I didn't work on Terra Firma, I didn't work on Talks, I did documentaries. If I was comparing them, Poltergeist seemed like a dark time. And, that could be that it was mainly one location that you guys were filming in, maybe?
Well, and all the windows were blacked out all the time. Our turnaround time was insane. So we would we would wrap like at 3 or 4 in the morning, go home, kind of get stuff ready a little bit for the next day, sleep for like 2 hours, wake up, and then go back to set. And then you're in a darkened chicken restaurant for your entire day. So you lost all sense of kind of time. And it was like running around in an ant farm. Like nobody wanted to stop working when they were back home. Otherwise, like they were afraid they'd get fired and lose their spot, like working on the movie. So like everybody is constantly working and like kind of brainwashed to make poultry guys. But I mean, it worked.
Oh, completely, man. Yeah. You know, I was talking to Blade about this like a few months ago. Like, you know, compared to the other productions, Poultry Guys, I mean, there's you that stick around, there's Caleb. There's not, I mean, I can't think of many other people from that production that are kind of like still around the Troma kind of like unit, I guess. I may be wrong, but
there's a few that kind of stuck around. Caleb for sure, because he came back. Gabe, obviously. John Landis actually worked on Nuke Em High, and not the John Landis, but the John Landis of Tromaville worked on.
Our John Landis, you know.
But yeah, no, it was kind of the same feeling. Like everybody there like was there for their love of Troma, but yeah, it's kind of funny. Some of the people still champion Troma quite a bit, and you know, a lot of them, you know, kind of fizzled out of that, or you know, just stopped talking about it.
It happens, man. You know, and not just that. You just realize that people, they get married, they have kids, they have mortgages. You know, life goes on. Well, for me, it's like, hey, when can I make the next movie? When can the next Troma movie? That's just become my life, you know, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I'm teaching my kids all about the Toxic Avengers. So they're gonna not be able to relate to anybody in kindergarten, but that's fine.
How old are your kids at?
They're 5 now.
Cool.
So but I think I might do a special with them coming up where they talk about Toxic Crusaders or Doggy Tales or something, because they know Troma, they know Uncle Lloydie. So
cool, man. Doggy Tales is amazing.
It is.
I love Doggy Tales, dude.
That'll be my first 3-hour episode. It'll be a super cut of Doggy Tales.
Oh man, have you shown them Monster in the Closet?
Not yet. That would be a good one to show them. It's kind of right now the attention span is half hour is pretty good, but so we're starting to get into a little bit longer movies. But Monster in the Closet. And then you worked on #Shakespeare Shitstorm as well on there.
That's
so
right,
you flew back out to, but this time like New York City, New York.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, this was like, you know, real New York, as in it felt like, I mean, you know, when Lisa Gay turns up on set, you're God. Like, you know that this is, you know, a New York Troma movie, right?
So I'm gonna say this. So on Poultry Geist, right? I was expecting to see the familiar faces of Tromaville, and I was very fortunate enough to meet Joe Flyshaker, but that was kind of about it. And we're on Jeremy. He was there as well, but you know, I'm wanting to see like, you know, all the old Troma stars, and then I'm seeing the people who showed up on Return to Nuke Em High and #Shakespeare Shitstorm. I'm like, you motherfuckers! Like, I'm so jealous.
And you know, I marked out so much when I saw Deborah Shawn and Lisa Gay, and it just felt like, oh my God, like, you know, people become starstruck when they see maybe like Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks or whatever. I don't know. I get starstruck when I see Deborah Shawn and Lisa Gay. I'm like, wow, this is my childhood right here, you know?
Right.
It's like one big Troma family, you know? And yeah, dude. So #Shakespeare Shitstorm, we filmed that in the summer of 2018. Me and Blade stayed in a local hostel, and you know, we walked to set every day, just talking, just all the obscure Troma trivia, you know, and singing the Troma's Edge TV theme song and, you know, the Tromaville Cafe theme song, like just complete Troma nerds, man, you know, and we were like in heaven, seriously, just being on the Troma set. And yeah, hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm is fantastic. If no one's seen it yet, it's probably going to do the festival run again now that things are opening back up, and I'm sure it's going to be on Troma now and probably Troma Blu-ray in the next 10, 15, 20 years, however long it'll take.
However long it takes.
For the Blu-ray. But yeah, man, like, have you seen hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm yet, Zach? Or?
I haven't had a chance to. There was like, I think the only way I could have was like the one screening they had at Fantasia, and I debated it, but it's like, I don't know if I really want my first time watching that movie to be on my computer.
No, exactly. Yeah, I agree. No, man, totally. And, you know, it's great that film festivals have been able to survive and kind of thrive, I guess, you know. But to me, I like the big screen experience like every other film fan, and it's just different when you're watching it on an iPad or a, you know, phone or whatever. So no, it's good that you're holding out, man. It's good that you're holding out. But no, great. I'd say that, you know, out of Return to Nuke Em High and hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm, I think hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm was probably my favorite production, just because, you know, as you know, like the Troma team are like a family, and it was great to meet new faces, you know, work in the art department, and you just, you know, be at that point a Troma veteran, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man, like my heart is in Tromaville, seriously, and just me and Blade every day, just fucking working and just fucking like, you know, being up all night, you know, doing night shoots and just feeling so shitty and cold by the time it gets to 6 a.m. But it's fine. All we need is 2 hours sleep and we're back on the Troma set again, man. You know, and it's, yeah, man, just fucking great. Just amazing. Great times.
And you're not just a veteran of Tromaville. You've also directed your own movies. You directed My Bloody Banjo, which in the trailer there's a dude wearing a Stuck on You shirt, which like right away I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be great. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. Funny story. I actually bought that Stuck on You T-shirt from Trent Hager. I didn't even know it was Trent Hager at the time. So from eBay, I think I bought that in like 2004, 2005, and I saw this guy's like username. And I'm like, see what else he sold and stuff. And I messaged him saying, yo, hi, is this Trent Hager? And he's like, yeah. It's like, oh, my, oh shit. You know, we used to talk on MySpace. I'm a massive Troma fan. Can I get your autograph? And, you know, Trent's like the nicest guy. So, you know, making My Bloody Banjo is based on a true story about a time that I snapped the banjo string on my penis, which is known as the frenulum, I think is the actual term. So I didn't have unprotected sex one night, and I'm like, oh shit, why does everything feel wetter than usual? Let's put the light on. Oh shit, why is the blood all over my dick? And then I'm like, oh shit, she must be on a period. So no worries, let me tidy up. And then my dick is still bleeding. And then she's like, oh, you snapped your banjo string. And I'm like, is that what it's called? So the next day, believe it or not, and this is a true story, which is kind of weird. We were both in London at the time. And the Mother's Day remake was at the cinema, the Darren Lynn Bousman Mother's Day remake, the 2011 remake. And after the film, I turned to my girlfriend at the time and was like, you know what happened last night might make for a great idea for a horror film. So I took that kind of the idea of someone snapping a banjo string, and I added an imaginary friend in there, like Drop Dead Fred, and it just kind of manifested itself into this feature-length script. And I just funded it the Kevin Smith way, by credit cards, by working a shitload of overtime at my job, and just being a very naive and hungry filmmaker that had no idea what the fuck he was doing, and just kind of like gave people money that kind of, hey, you know how to DP, you know how to do this. And, you know, to be fair, that movie was made on 15 grand, and it looks more than 15 grand, which I'm happy with, because, you know, a lot of favors went on with the film. Oh, thanks, dude. You know, and we got Lawrence Harvey, the Human Centipede guy, who's in 2 and 3 in it. Lloyd flew over to a town called Barnsley, which is like just a proper like Yorkshire town, a working class Yorkshire town in England, nowhere near London. And Lloyd like flew in from New York to Manchester. Someone picked him up from Manchester, took him to Barnsley. He had 3 hours sleep, came to set, did his lines within 3 hours, went back to his hotel, and then back to New York. It was like such a really fast turnaround. But, it was so cool. It was my first movie. I made so many mistakes on that movie. It was my film school. I took it to Cannes the following year, and everyone told me in Cannes, Liam, do not go into your own market screening. So a market screening is you screen your film and people will, sales agents and distributors will visit. They don't want to be entertained. They just want to see if they want to buy it or not. And I'm like, fuck you. This is my first movie. I'm going to be in my market screening. So I'm sat there and I'm watching it. And I'm just watching the movie die on its ass. Like, no one were reacting. No one were laughing. People were leaving. And, halfway through the film, I walked out the cinema. I just broke down crying, Zach. It was like just such a, I don't know. I think when you've made your first movie and it's like 107 minutes long, which is too long for a horror comedy, and you watch it with an audience, I think that's when you learn to be more disciplined with your film. Like, I Skyped with my editor that night in Cannes. I was crying. I was like, oh. And I'm like, dude, it died in its ass. We need to at least get 25 minutes yanked out of it. And after the Cannes experience, it world premiered at Fright Fest, which is this big film festival in London. And I traveled around the world with the film. And Lloyd always told me, Lloyd is the only guy in the film biz that has been very honest with me. He said, Liam, we'd be more than happy to put My Bloody Banjo out, but you're not going to make any money. And I'm like, all right, no worries, buddy. And so I took it to another distributor called Midnight Releasing in Arizona. And they promised me Walmart, they promised me it'd be uncut, they promised me all these things, right? And then they got me to sign the deal, like they do with every other naive filmmaker. And this isn't just Midnight Releasing, this is, any independent distributor. They'll promise you the world. They put it on Amazon MOD, like a burn-on-demand function, which is normal these days, but 5 years ago, not so much. They changed the title to the film. It used to be called Banjo, now it's called My Bloody Banjo, but I've warmed up to that. But they also cut the movie on digital platforms, and, I'll see the film pop up in Italy. I'll see the film pop up in Argentina, and I'll get my sales reports every 6 months. And it's like, oh shit, why is this territory not listed? But the problem is when you're a first-time filmmaker and you question it, they've got lawyers. They if you want to ask them questions, you got to deal with their lawyers. And I don't have an entertainment lawyer, and you cannot find it. So you just got to learn from your mistakes and just be a bit more kind. I mean, every filmmaker goes through it, right? You'll always get screwed on your first movie, unfortunately. And Lloyd is the only guy who's,
he's honest about.
Yeah, completely. And I would have been best off. That movie is a Troma movie. That My Bloody Banjo, which it was on Troma now for a year, the license lasted a year, but My Bloody Banjo is a love letter to Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hurst. That's essentially what it is, and it should have been with Troma. So with my second movie, Eating Miss Campbell, Lloyd wanted to produce it. Lloyd loved banjo, and he actually, put some money into Eating Miss Campbell. And, I was just very honest with Lloyd. I'm like, Lloyd, I need to make money off my second film. So Lloyd bought the North American rights. And, and to me, it's like, how many of the distributors will give you money up front? It's very rare it happens these days. Because, they probably won't see a return. As you probably know, Zach, the indie film biz is kind of like, you need to self-distribute to make money, in my opinion.
You need to sell the T-shirts to make the...
Yeah, man. It's like bands these days, right? In the 2000s, anyone can get a record deal, right? Now, for bands to make money, they need to tour, they need to sell the T-shirt, you need to sell this, you need to sell that. And essentially, that's what independent filmmaking is,
It's kind of nice that we grew up watching Lloyd do that. So there's in all the special features, he always said, if you go with Troma, you're not going to make any money. We don't make any money selling our movies. And then you see Lloyd in the behind the scenes clips at like all the things, and he's not necessarily selling the movies, but he's selling himself in an experience to go buy the T-shirt and go shake hands with Lloyd Kaufman. So when we were doing Adam, we're like we it took forever to get that movie on DVD because piracy was super huge and nobody wanted to put a movie that has no stars in it. That's like, looks like it was shot out of a shoe, like a 1080p shoe. Like somehow we made HD look awful. But like, but but we learned it's like, well, if we sell t-shirts and we give away posters and, you know, just make friends with everybody who wants to see our movie, it'll have an audience, but we're not going to make any money doing that. And same thing like you, it's like we're like, you know, this should really be what Troma, it's a Troma movie. So it's fun to hear someone else coming up kind of the same way, but it's like, no, I made a Troma movie. Like there's like in my heart, it deserves the red skyline at the beginning.
Dude, definitely, man. You know, and that skyline, that ident at the beginning of that just encapsulates my childhood. You know, be it like Fat Guy Goes Nutzoid or Demented Death Farm Massacre or Femfontaine Kill a Bear for the CIA. You know, like you know, blondes have more guns. You know, it's like, and then at the end, it's like I'm Troma. Of course, you know, golden times. The 90s and the early 2000s were just the best.
Well, that's a pretty good segue into the 90s era of Troma. So the movie that we're going to talk about this episode, Sucker the Vampire, which you suggested, which funny enough, I had not watched before this, but I just ordered it and it showed up the day you messaged me. You're like, how about we do Sucker? I got it in the mail that day. I was like, well, yep, we have to now. So I'm going to play the trailer, but the trailer is mostly instrumental. It's set to the groovy Ghoulie song, Graveyard Girlfriend. There's a few sound effects scattered throughout. So the audience, I want you to imagine the following. Scenes being lit entirely in blue and red lights. Plenty of nudity from big-breasted blondes, sexy vampire killers, fangs, goofy faces, and 90s fashions, rock bands, underwater swimming pool shots, and plenty of necks being bitten. I present to you Hans Rodionoff's 1998 film, Sucker the Vampire. So when was the first time you watched Sucker? This was my very first time watching it. I read the comic book before this because Troma Comics made one, but I never seen the movie. I was always aware of it. But
yeah, I mean, I'm not really a big vampire guy unless
me
Troma
either.
Yeah, it's never been a thing for me. I was never a big fan of Lost Boys, right? But I was more of a Fright Night kind of guy. But when it comes to like Troma and Full Moon, if there's a vampire film, I somehow love it for some reason. So with Sucker the Vampire, that came in the box with like 10 other DVDs from Troma as a freebie. And I was like, and back then I watched anything that came out on DVD. I'd buy and I'd watch, right?
Yeah.
So with Sucker the Vampire, I was like, okay, and I'm watching it. I'm like, there's just the aesthetic of that movie. I think it was filmed in 1997. It introduced me to like the Groovy Ghoulies and like all these cool like ska punk bands.
That soundtrack is killer. Like I wish there was a physical copy of it. Like Mr. T Experience, Agent Orange, like at the drive-in before At the Drive-in was even a thing, and like the Blue Meanies did the thing. Yeah, like I was listening to the commentary on the DVD, and apparently none of that music existed in the initial cut, and Lloyd helped him get all the music for it, which it's like killer, like kind of like mid 90s like weird punk stuff.
Completely, and I think the soundtrack really helps move the film along as well. I think, see, I watched it all the time as a kid. In fact, it was really weird because before I came on Zoom, Zach, I was like listening to the audio commentary that I've not listened to in like 20 years probably. And I, as a 16-year-old, listening to filmmakers talk about film on this new format called DVD, it was exciting, and it's still a really fun commentary track.
It's a good commentary.
Oh, totally, man.
Yeah, you won't learn a lot, but it's really entertaining.
Really entertaining, yeah, man. And it's they tell one story. I think like when Troma or Lloyd was at this like a film convention or whatever, and they threw the screener of Sucker like through the elevator door where Lloyd was at.
I actually have a clip of them from the commentary of them like talking about just like Lloyd and Troma in general. I want to play that real quick.
Lloyd Kaufman.
Oh,
we would have had a whole Lloyd Kaufman
is
thing
God.
In here.
I mean, he does things
Lloyd
that are
is
unbelievable.
Our God, he's a benefactor with Sucker, but having met him at AFM and hung out with him for a little while, and then also going to the various conventions and stuff and promoting Sucker, it's the best, man.
Lloyd is the master of doing nothing but selling his product. We went to USC, which was the college I dropped out of first before I dropped out of the film school we were at.
Right.
And we got to talk this film class, and I was thinking, hey, this is great. Lloyd's going to get up and talk, and I might learn something about Troma. I wouldn't, normally ask him these questions in his face, so this is great. Lloyd didn't answer one question. He handed out Aroma de Troma, the Troma perfume
from Troma,
and he plugged his book, and it was a beautiful sight. It was,
and he wouldn't answer the questions at all. It's like he
didn't answer one question.
The instructor would say something like, Now, Lloyd, where did you get the name Troma? Thinking, well, it's very interesting. Actually, Troma, the name Troma comes from. We always say that things are very traumatic here in Tromaville, and and here's Tromeo and Juliet, and we do have a clip from. Oh my God, there's Mr. Kabuki Man, and Mr. Kabuki Man, tell us about your new movie.
Oh God, the best.
And he'd pull everybody in. That's the thing about Lloyd is he loves to have sort of like a whole. Bunch of people around him all just plugging Troma, just everybody looking up in the camera and going, Troma, so get all these people together and be like, and oh my God, look, it's Alex Ercoletti and it's the star of Sucker.
Oh my God.
So tell our lovely viewers a little bit something about, your experience working on Sucker. Go ahead, Alex, tell us about it.
Well, Lloyd, it was,
And another thing that Alex also was a part of was, actually was not a part of, but sort of was a witness to was the new movie called Terror Firmer, which goes into production next week. Toxie, you want to help us out? People at Toxic Avenger.
Lloyd is the best.
He's my God, man.
All I know is the second interview we did with E in Vegas, they knew us, and they showed up, and they had this look like, God, the Troma people.
So I watched it for the first time again in like 20 years, Sucker the Vampire, and I still think it holds up really well. It has that. It's so 997, right? With just laughing and the comedy and being an edgy teenager. If something's dealing with like necrophilia and like AIDS, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking love this.
Well, let's dive in and kind of just go through the plot of this thing. So first off, Hans Rodionoff, I was looking him up just to see what else he did, and he wrote the Man-Thing adaptation. Which is pretty fun. And then he writes for the Goldbergs now, that TV show, which it's like it's nice to see, starting at Troma and like, still like working on there. Then there's like the main character isn't actually a vampire. It's this henchman named Reed Buckles, and I'm gonna murder his last name, but Alex Erickson or Ericleton or something. But
That sounds about right.
he's great, and he definitely looks of the era of 1997 in that movie.
Totally. In fact, that character of Reed Buckles, he has like, these really animated kind of like movements. It reminds me of the character of London Arbuckle from Romeo and Juliet.
Yes, I could see that.
Totally.
Yeah, he's really funny in that movie too. When I was like, what, like the humor in this movie, I'm surprised like you don't hear this movie more. Like when people are talking of Troma classics, like this should really be in there. And I'm disappointed I didn't see it in high school, because this would have made its way onto all those bootleg tapes I gave my friends. At least some of the best of stuff. And then so it starts off, and you could tell they were fans of the Lost Boys, because the vampires are all in a band, but they're called the Plasmas. So, and then the lead actor of the movie is Jan Birch from People Under the Stairs. So, it's funny. I'm in a movie with him called Terror Tales, but I've never met him. But I think I'm more excited about the Sucker the Vampire connection than the People Under the Stairs.
That guy has such a great presence about him. His look, his face is like really gone. He just looks so cool.
Yeah, he's great in that movie. So these, they pull in groupies, the band does, and then that's how they decide who their victims is. But one of the victims is related to Van Helsing, and she, is stalking this band. And she's Vanessa Van Helsing, and she's played by Monica Barber, who's also in another Troma movie called Vendetta. So that's kind of fun. But she's goes around, killing people with holy water that's in mace, which is pretty fun.
It's weird. It's so weird because like the A story is essentially like a buddy film, right? Okay, and then you got the B story, and it feels totally different from the rest of the film, don't you think? Like it kind of feels jarring.
The buddy story is a lot more interesting to me than the vampire. Like I'm gonna track down the vampires. Like you just want to see this super straight-laced, Dracula character played by Jan Birch, and then his like slapsticky Igor like follow him around. And
totally. I mean, this Sucker should have been a road trip movie. Imagine that. That'd be so cool. Like a Dumb and Dumber, but like
on a boat.
On a boat, yeah, completely cruising. Yeah.
And the character too of Anthony, who Jan plays, is pretty interesting. Like he's watching videotapes of the sunrise all the time, except for the one scene when he's watching an exercise video but listening to the commentary. They're like, I have no idea why we did that. It should have been a sunrise there too. But and then also it's a Troma movie, so we should mention that in true Troma fashion, there's boobs in the first 5 minutes of this movie.
Oh yeah, and it feels like that was probably an insert or something that they did in the reshoots, because it's kind of like, because the film itself is pretty kind of safe in a way, right? It's not that violent, It deals with necrophilia, however, with Nurse Buckles, but apart from that, it's not on the extreme side Troma. It's something like Cannibal the Musical. It would fit, nicely with, in terms of it has these kind of like surreal and out there ideas, but it plays it pretty straight for most of it.
I feel like maybe, and this could just be, it's 2021, and I hadn't watched the movie earlier, but I wonder. So part of the story is Anthony goes and attacks Vanessa Van Helsing, who ends up giving him AIDS. And I don't know, in 2021, you're like, oh, that's kind of a neat plot device. But in 1997, I don't know if that was like, holy shit, like, like I've never seen that. And I still haven't ever really seen that before, but it's a neat idea for a vampire movie.
Oh, completely, and it just fits perfectly. I mean, to me, the AIDS angle just fits perfectly with Troma. It harkens back to Troma's War. It has that kind of like edgy kind of social commentary going on that Troma's famous for. And to me, it fits perfect. But also, it kind of, Sucker the Vampire, you could show anybody. Like, even if someone wasn't into Troma, I feel like this film, if they love vampire films, it just fits perfectly with that.
It really does.
Oh, yeah. And I think the director, did he write a Lost Boys film? Did he write The Tribe?
I think he did.
Yeah. I think I saw that on IMDb, that I actually wrote The Tribe. In fact, I'll tell you something else I saw on IMDb, Zach, which I can't believe, right? I'm looking at the reviews of Sucker, and I see this username, Troma Boy UK, who wrote a review for Sucker in 2001. And it was me. I'm like, oh my God. I can't remember doing this.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So there's this scene where this band member, Tobin, he goes into this apartment with Vanessa Van Helsing, and there's Pumpkinhead hanging on the wall. It just feels super out of place. Like you're in a pretty typical vampire movie, and then you see like all these like recognizable horror movie monsters hanging on the wall. But the actor who played Tobin, he was in the Troma movie Blood Sisters of Lesbian Sin.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's like you could do your vampire Troma double feature right there with with those ones. But I actually have a clip from the director about the vampire teeth that they used for Tobin, how they were made out of Sculpey.
Early on, we wanted to make each vampire reflect a different vampire from past movies, and with her teeth, I thought we had to do the Lon Chaney After Midnight teeth, which look more like demon teeth, but it's still pretty close.
It looks pretty cool, though.
And then Kurt's teeth that we came up with, the Nosferatu teeth, they broke the day of.
They broke,
and
so
we
then
actually
we
used
had to get some Sculpey. And we were baking these little teeth and baking them in the oven.
Right before.
And then we had to shoot, so we took the things out of the oven and stuck them in his mouth. And they were still like 110 degrees. And they were burning the upper roof of his mouth and his gums and everything.
It's fusion.
One of the cool things about this movie was the whole AIDS aspect back on that. Because they were like, when you have AIDS, you lose your sense of appetite. So, but you're a vampire, so you don't die, so you just waste away to nothing. And then they're like, at that point, they're gonna think you're dead, and we'll just bury you alive. And I was like, holy shit, that's like kind of dark for a vampire movie, especially one called Sucker the Vampire, where it's very slapsticky throughout.
Completely. I mean, even the tone of the film, you kind of feel sorry for Anthony near the end, because the whole the Nurse Buckles character in Anthony, you can see that Anthony kind of befriends Nurse Buckles, and they become much more friendlier as the film goes along, and you kind of just feel sorry for that connection kind of just distancing itself.
They play so well off each other, because Buckles he's just an absolute goof. And they're adding sound effects every time he's moving around, and he works at a hospital, so that way he's able to dispose of the bodies. They don't really explain how he could dispose of the bodies there, other than I assume he just wheels them into the morgue. Maybe apparently there's no checklist or whatever. But before that, he brings them on his boat, and he does wacky photo montages of necrophilia with them, which is pretty silly. I don't know how those actresses kept a straight face doing those scenes acting dead, because he's hamming it up.
Oh yeah.
There's a scene in the middle, for whatever reason he gets a rubber vampire killing kit, and he thinks it'd be funny to go harass like Anton, like there's no way a vampire would get offended with this mallet and steak. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Have you read the comic book for Sucker the Vampire?
I haven't. Now I know that Troma released like I think it was Terra Firma, Romeo and Juliet, Frostbiter comic.
Well,
Is that right?
they didn't put Frostbite. Somebody else put Frostbiter out, but they did Chosen One, Sucker, Tromeo, Terra Firma, and Toxic Avenger.
Right. So yeah, I've not read any of those comics. However, how does the Sucker comic compare to the film?
It's pretty interesting. So, like in the comic book, they don't mention necrophilia at all, which is like Reed's like big driving force, and he actually seems really smart in the comic book.
Okay.
So other than that, it's the third act is a lot clearer of what's going on in the comic book. I don't quite know, what happened filmmaking wise, but they had like kind of like in the movie like another vampire who's like kind of the head of the family, and her motives are sort of unclear why she's even there. Like she's like, oh, Reed, I'll make you part of the family, and it's like I don't quite understand what's happening right now in the movie, but they sort of explain what's going on in the comic book a little bit better. Right. I think they were able to watch them.
So with them dropping the necrophilia aspect in the comic book, were the other Troma comics also kind of like toned down, or was it just that aspect that was kind of dropped?
So I haven't read the Chosen One, Legend of the Raven yet. The Toxic Avenger one is a completely new story, and the Terra Firma's pretty spot on. I mean, they cut some gags up, but that one spans 2 issues. The Romeo and Juliet one seems fairly spot on, but it was supposed to be 2 issues at least, and they only did 1. So,
too bad.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Chosen One lines up with the movie. Yeah.
So, I own the Chosen One, but it's one I've not seen. But I remember Troma really pimping it out in 1998, because Carmen Electra's in it. Is that right?
Yeah, Carmen Electra is Chosen One, Legend of the Raven.
How is it? Is it good?
I honestly, I'm in the same boat. I own it. I have never watched it. I'm gonna talk about it on the show at some point.
Yeah, dude.
Because it was one that trailer was before every Troma movie, along with the Rowdy Girls.
So I own the Rowdy Girls. I've still not seen the Rowdy Girls. So 2 films, like, for whatever reason, I just never put them in my DVD player for whatever reason. They'll look great on a shelf. So
I think with those ones, like, you from the trailer, you're like, I know exactly what I'm gonna get with this movie. Whereas like the Sucker trailer, you're like, okay, there's something more going on here. The Rowdy Girls, it's like, I'm gonna see Julie Strain's boobs a bunch. So.
Yeah, look, I was a horny teenager like everybody else, but all I really cared about was like the Toxic Avenger and Nuke Em High, not so much the Rowdy Girls, But what I also love about Sucker the Vampire, it fits with that punk rock aesthetic that Romeo and Juliet had, and then that carried over with Terra Firma. And it's just great to have, because to me, Troma is essentially like the punk rock, of music. And or else, is another analogy, if you like wrestling. ECW is kind of like the Troma of film studios in a way. I always made this analogy in high school. And I mean, being a punk kid, being a goth punk kid, into alternative music, Troma were just especially their soundtracks, not just the Sucker soundtrack, the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack, the Terra Firma soundtrack, the Citizen Toxie soundtrack. It just kind of catered, Troma knew who their audience were, right?
Troma actually got me into the music that I'm into today. I never heard Motorhead before the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. I mean, that's not true. I've seen the Young Ones episode where Motorhead's playing Ace of Spades, but you hear Sacrifice and you're like, oh, that's pretty rad. And then every introduction from that era, they're playing Brujeria in the background. It's like, that's pretty crazy. And I remember like our high school was doing a Shakespeare festival like downtown Denver, Colorado. And so we had a Virgin Megastore there, and I didn't have a car, so there's no way I could ever get there. But I like knew they had Troma stuff, and I found the Terra Firma soundtrack and viewer discretion advised on VHS. And so I like picked those up, and it's like I was aware of punk music. I didn't like Blink 182. I thought they were lame. And so it's like, well, if that's punk music, I don't really give a fuck. And then I got the Terra Firma soundtrack. I was like, holy shit. Like, this is okay. Now I know what everybody is talking about. And then, just tracking down their soundtracks. And then they had like the Toxic Tunes from Tromaville, which had like, all the theme songs and stuff. So, and then just like seeing which of these other bands that Go-Kart put out. And it's like, okay, well, here's the Lunatics. They did the theme song, so getting super into the Lunatics. And then finding out Gigi Allen's drummer was in love with them. So then discovering Gigi Allen because of Tromaville. It's crazy.
Oh, totally, man. It is. I remember the early days of Napster. I think one of the first tracks I ever downloaded was the Loose Nuts, the Citizen Toxic theme.
Something must have changed when I woke
up today. So good.
Yes. I still want them, like, now they're going through and putting all the soundtracks out on vinyl. I still need that Toxic Avenger with Body Talk, like, on vinyl.
Yeah, man. I was speaking to my friend Justin Martell, who runs Ship to Show Media, and they put out the class Nuke Em High soundtrack.
Didn't they also do Troma's War?
They did. That is correct. Correctamundo. Yeah, man. Those guys are great. They put out some great releases. But from what I understand, I think there's I think Lloyd mentioned this, in fact, that Troma don't have the rights to Body Talk, the actual track. And I heard somewhere it was Corey Feldman's dad who wrote that or something.
What?
Which is kind of a weird parallel. With Corey Feldman being in Citizen Toxic as is it Kinky Finkelstein or something?
Kinky Finkelstein. So when I went to Troma Dance in Park City, Utah, with the Troma Team, and our first venture out of the Troma house to go parade for Troma, we walked right past Corey Feldman, and like I yelled, "I love you, Kinky Finkelstein," and I'm holding my Troma signs, and he turned around and gave me a thumbs up, and then one of Corey Feldman's handlers was like, "Back off of Corey." And I was like, that's amazing.
That is cool, man. That's cool. What year was that? What year were you with Troma Dance in Utah?
I went to Troma Dance probably like 4 or 5 times. I'm trying to think, like maybe from like 2006 through like 2010, like just kind of throughout there. So
yeah, man, I always loved the Volume 1 DVD with that H.R. Pukenshire short film and Deadbeats with Mick Foley. In fact, funny story, I saw Mick Foley stand up in Nottingham, in England, and everyone were like getting their 8x10 signed and whatever. I take my Troma Dance, my Best of Troma Dance Volume 1 DVD. He looks at it going, Troma Dance, Deadbeats. And it's like, that's probably the first Troma Dance DVD is probably signed.
Maybe the only one until I meet him.
Yeah, man, it's really weird because, like, I met Joe Lynch in 2010 at Fright Fest because he directed Wrong Turn 2 and he's got a career himself. And I screenshotted loads of, he was on the Combat Shock DVD extras as Combat Jacques. And I actually screenshotted the images of Joe Lynch, like, because he also was in Terra Firma and loads of Troma extras on the DVDs. And he's like, oh man, like, he was like so surprised that this British kid like had all these Troma photos asking him to sign. But he's, I think with Troma people, to me, they're like my celebrities. Like, oh my God, you're that guy from Tromaville Cafe episode, and
Yeah, funny that you mentioned Joe Lynch. So when the whole pandemic thing started, I tweeted to him because he also wore the Toxic Avenger mask in Park City, Utah during Troma Dance. I tweeted to him, I'm like, we both threw up in the Toxie mask, so we'll survive Corona. And then he's like, I don't know how to take that. And he kind of started just sharing it around with his friends. He's like, this is not a message you want to typically get.
No. Oh man, it's like working in Tromaville. It's like a badge of honor that only a few, like 100 people, kind of can relate to, right? It's one of these things.
As like offensive as this is gonna sound, I feel like you can only really share those Tromaville experiences with other people who have been in Tromaville. Kind of like if you went to war, you can only share that with somebody else who went to war. Like nobody else will get it. And it's like yeah, like you went to the Vietnam War. You can talk to somebody who went to the Korean War. It's like you and me know what it's like getting yelled at by a 70-year-old man because there's not enough fake poop around. So like no one else will know like the anxiety that gives you.
Oh, totally, man, totally. But if anything, it's like, are you really a Troma Team member if you've not been yelled at by Lloyd in some time of your life? Like, it's like, that's what happens.
The first time, Lloyd was yelling at me. Like, it's like, oh fuck, like my hero is yelling at me. At the back of my head, it's like, oh man, I'm getting like that asshole time story like he talks about in his books. So it's like I'm geeking out at the same the same moment. As like being like, I don't want to make him upset. Well, at any rate, do you have any final thoughts on Sucker the Vampire?
You know what, man, revisiting it after like 20 years or might be longer than 20 years. No, it's been 20 years. It's still a really cool movie. Like it's got that cool like giallo lighting in places. It was probably shot on like Super 16mm, I believe the film stock was. It's just a fun movie, and I think what I like about it is, as I mentioned earlier, it plays it straight, but then there's these like elements of like AIDS and necrophilia, and then you've got like Buckles, who's like a live action cartoon character, and it just, to me, the movie bleeds 1997. Like you watch it,
it's a time capsule for sure.
Oh yeah, completely. And it's so weird that films like films in the 2010s, I can't really tell when a film will, I can tell if a film was shot in 95 or 93. I cannot tell you if a film was shot in 2011 to 2013 to 2014. Like something's happened, right? Where it's like, I can distinctly tell, but now everything's kind of same. What is that? Why is it like?
In Sucker, you're like, all right, well, there's the long green trench coat and the combat boots, and there is a flannel shirt tied around that guy's waist. So, like, when that movie was made.
Totally, man. And I wish films were like more identifiable now, but it just kind of, the whole digital kind of filmmaking, which is great. I mean, without digital filmmaking, I wouldn't be able to make a film, but it just feels like everything just feels too polished and clean these days, right? I miss when film looks like film, and obviously that's to do with film stock, obviously, but still, man, like, I'm sure like making an independent film in the 80s and 90s, it has such a more of an organic, raw feel, but now anyone can make it. There's still gems out there. It's just hard to find the gems, right?
And that's kind of what I want to do with like on the show is I feel like everybody knows Toxic Avenger and Class of Nuke Em High, but they have such a huge library that I still like. When I say it's a library, you're not going to read every book at your library, and there's no way I'm going to watch every Troma movie. There's just so many, but there's so many good ones in there that people don't know about that even I still want to find out about.
Oh, totally, man. I'll probably watch Rowdy Girls and just The Chosen One this week. In fact, Zach, right? I actually own like a few of the witchcraft DVDs because I heard that they were really rare to get, like discontinued. So I put down serious coin on eBay for these witchcraft DVDs. Still not seen them yet, but just to have them, I don't know, like with Troma DVDs, they're kind of like Pokemon cards, you know? You gotta catch them all, man.
So the new one I'm trying to track down is Tomcat Angels.
Oh, that's so hard to find, dude. So
I
rare.
I remember seeing that like when it came out, and the trailer was a staple on all those old Troma Team videotapes, and it's like it's not a movie for me, maybe, but like airplane fights, and they soar in the air and they fly in the sheets or something like that, and it's like.
Yeah.
And so it's like that's one I should talk about on the show. And the DVD's going for like $100, and it's like, and the cover is awful. Like,
it's so weird. Like in the mid 2000s, something happened with Troma and their DVD covers, right? Like from around 2005, 2006, it's like it feels like they just got any Troma in the Troma building. Hey, we're going to be doing video vixens. Hey, we're going to put out Tomcat Angels.
So I actually do have a story about that. So on Poultrygeist, the guy who did a lot of the artwork for them, he was working on Poultrygeist, and one day he was like, because I did the blood on Poultrygeist, he's like, "Blood boy, I need blood for this photo shoot," and then he grabbed the actress who played Mickey in Poultrygeist and gave her an axe, and he's like, "I need you to cover her with blood." And I'm so confused because it's like, why does she have an axe? Nobody has an axe in this entire movie. Why? Like, and I don't think she really knew what, other than he's like, "I need to take a picture for Troma of you wearing this white tank top covered in blood holding this axe." And so we did it, and then that picture got photoshopped into the cover of Parts of the Family.
Amazing.
I'm like, I made that blood on that cover. And that was like when it wasn't out yet on DVD or anything, or VHS, but I saw the trailer for it like when I was working on Poultrygeist. So it's like, oh man, like I can't wait to see Parts of the Family. And it's like, I helped make that DVD cover apparently.
Yeah, it's so weird because Troma has so much great original art, like, the one sheets and that. I'm like, those things will sell themselves. Just stick the original artwork on, we're going to be fine,
The Lust for Freedom cover is
yes!
Where it's like, why did they make that?
Who drew this cartoon? It's like, what the hell? It's so bizarre, but there's something about that which is also endearing,
It's also very Troma. Like,
it is so Troma. It is so Troma, dude. But yeah, man, like Tomcat Angels is really hard to get on DVD, and also Eve's Beach Fantasy. That's also very rare to get.
So we were talking about Blockbuster in England, like carrying the Toxic Avenger 2. My neighborhood Blockbuster had a copy of Eve's Beach Fantasy, and so my buddy Richard, who I make movies with, we track that. Like, we're like, at that point we've seen Bloodsucking Freaks and Rabid Grannies and Cannibal the Musical Toxie, so it's like we're like, definitely sticking our feet in there. We're like, let's get Eve's Beach Fantasy, and nothing like watching a porn with all the porn cut out with like your best friend on the couch while his parents are sleeping upstairs. You're like, this isn't the Troma movie I was thinking we were getting.
Yeah, like it's so weird that like when you're introduced to Troma, like Toxic Avenger and Classic Nuke Em High, you've got this idea of what every Troma film is going to be like, and then you get burned. But you still keep going back, because to me, there's always something. I mean, it's the whole cliche that Lloyd says. It's like, you may hate it, you may love it, but you'll never forget it. It's kind of true in a way, right?
Yeah, like even the bad Troma movies are still a lot more interesting than some of like the Tom and Jerry movie that just came out.
Completely.
It's like I'd rather watch, 1,000 Eve's Beach Fantasies any day.
Yeah, man, I'd rather watch fucking Evil Clutch, which, man, I wish I liked Evil Clutch, but every time I revisit Evil Clutch, I'm like, this is why I don't watch this too much. But I'll take Evil Clutch over fucking Justice League, right? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take Nymphoid Barbarian in Dinosaur Hell over Kong vs. Godzilla, right? And Nymphoid Barbarian, when I first watched that, I'm like, what the hell is this? But watching it with the director's commentary, it's fucking golden. Have you heard it with the director's commentary?
It's a good commentary. And he's talked about how he did the effects, and I like right at the beginning of that, they're like, I don't know why Troma called it this. I guess to sell more copies. They tacked on this beginning that has nothing to do with anything else in the movie. So once you get past the fact that it's not really about a nymphoid barbarian in the dinosaur hell, it's a pretty fun movie.
It is, the effects are great, and Brett Piper went on to do Class Nuke 'Em High 2 by Eric Lucille, and yeah, man,
That's
good
awesome.
films.
Speaking of other movies, well, real quick, so if you want to watch Sucker the Vampire, there's a standalone DVD. It's on Troma now, and they also put out a DVD, a triple D header called Tainted Vampires. That also has Tainted and Rockabilly Vampire on there. So track that.
Oh, that's
down.
a good one. Rockabilly Vampire is great.
I'm going to talk about that one. Another good Troma movie with a good soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. Really good.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that one on the show for sure. Not going to do 2 vampire episodes. Troma actually has a lot of good vampire movies, like Drawing Blood.
Yes.
They probably have a better ratio of good vampire movies than any other film company.
I agree. I completely agree. No, totally, man.
All right. Well, let's talk about the double feature. So you're booking the night at your theater. You have Sucker the Vampire first. What is your double feature?
It's got to be Subspecies.
In the dark past, humans were their prey, and blood was their life.
Find Radu. Find him before killing begins again.
Now in modern-day Transylvania, eternal evil has reawakened.
I'm afraid for you. She makes me want again. I must destroy him.
Subspecies, starring Michael Watson and Angus Scrimm of Phantasm. Subspecies. The night has fangs.
It's Subspecies, Full Moon Entertainment. Growing up in the 90s, it was my obsessions with Troma Entertainment and Full Moon Entertainment. Huge Puppet Master fan, but not just Puppet Master, but Subspecies. Radu. And to me, it's there's something about low-budget, straight-to-video vampire films that are much more fun than the fucking Hollywood counterparts. And to me, get a Lloyd Kaufman film up there and get a Charles Band-produced film, because I believe Subspecies was directed by Ted Nicolai, I believe it was.
Yeah, Ted Nicolai in 91.
Ooh, that's right, but he also directed Puppet Master vs. Demonic Toys, which I fucking love, because that also has Corey Feldman in it.
Well, and bringing this back to Sucker, so Angus Scrimm, this is a long road back to Sucker. So Angus Scrimm, who's in Subspecies, is in another movie called Legend of the Phantom Rider, and that is directed by the actor of I can't pronounce his name, who plays Buckles in Sucker, Alex Erichelson. If you're listening, I apologize that I cannot say your name, but
I have one final Sucker kind of story, which is it's kind of weird. I was 16, and when you listen to the audio commentary, they mention something about AOL Messenger or Instant Messenger, AOL IM, and I must have like messaged Seed Productions, which were the production company of Sucker, and I'm like, hey, is this, whoever? And then they're like, yeah, who's this? And I'm like, oh, hi, I'm just I'm a 16-year-old Troma fan from the UK. I'm just wondering if you're going to make Sucker 2. And then they were like, I think it was the director that responded or someone. They were like, oh yeah, maybe one day. But I was like, just blown out of my mind that someone responded. And I wouldn't have even known to contact them if it wasn't for the DVD commentary. So it's like, growing up, Troma DVD commentaries for me were like film school. They're just great just to listen to. Like Buddy Giovanazzi, his Combat Shock audio commentary is absolutely fantastic. Have you heard it, Zach?
It's great. I haven't heard. Did he do a new one for that Severin Blu-ray release of it?
I don't know. I own that Blu-ray, and that goes for big bucks these days on eBay. Like that's like really rare. But I'm not sure. The original '97 Troma DVD release is a great commentary.
And the Tro Masterpiece edition that came out is really good as well. Like that's one of those movies I was like, I want to talk about Combat Shock, and then I'm like, oof, that movie's rough. Like it's really good, but it's not like a fun movie to when you're.
No, dude, not at all. I mean, that milk scene at the end when he's drinking the sour milk.
Yeah, when I got that movie, seeing the trailer, it's like Combat Shock, and it's like, oh man, what am I in for? And then it's like, oh, this is depressing. You're just like, I'm glad I watched this. It's really good. So, and I'm mad at myself for hesitating because that's what went through my head when that Severin Blu-ray came out. It's like, oh, it's a good movie. Oof. I don't know if I'm going to watch that one again. And then I was like, I should. Oh, it's sold out. Well, fuck.
Yeah, man. But it's such a great movie. But I understand, like, some films you only need to watch once and it has that effect. Like, for me, Requiem for a Dream. I only need to watch that film once. I never need to see that film again,
Yeah. Well, for my double feature in my theater, I'm going to go with the 2009 film, Lesbian Vampire Killers.
I got a plan. Does it involve girls? Let's go hiking.
That is one of the most depressingly shitty ideas for a holiday I've ever heard in my life, ever.
Country air. Nothing like it.
Smells like normal air with cow shit in it.
What are the chances?
These girls are all going to the exact same cottage that we are! I love hiking!
What was that?
Vampires.
Vampires?
Vampires?
Lesbian vampires.
Nice one.
Yep. Lesbian vampires.
It's not too late to save your friends, this village, the entire world!
Balls. Oh, yeah!
We have to find Trudy. You like Trudy, don't you? Not that much.
I like it.
You clam lappers fancy a piece of me then, do ya? Bollocks. Let's fucking have it!
Stand back. Christ, that thing is rock solid. Get in.
Next time, he'll have me bummed by a big gay werewolf, I swear.
Starring James Corden, who I never thought would end up being talked about ever on this podcast, but here we are. So.
Man, you guys love James Corden. You guys can keep James Corden,
Yeah, I hear he's a fantastic human being and well loved by everybody he works with. So, man, my mom loves him.
See, I'm not
the carpool karaoke.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, man, I can't stand James Corden, I've got to be honest. In fact, I heard, I've not seen Cats, but I really want to see Cats. But I heard, he was, really ripping on Cats after it came out. It's like, don't be like everyone else. Don't just shit on something you've just done because the public hates it. I mean, Cats may be terrible. I don't know. Have you seen Cats?
I didn't, and one of my buddies invited me to go see it right before all the movies shut down. and I wish I did. So I could have
Yeah,
said the last movie I saw in the theater was Cats, and look at where we are now. But yeah, if you haven't seen that movie, it's surprisingly pretty funny. It's basically a ripoff of Shaun of the Dead meets American Werewolf in London. Two guys go on holiday to this town that whenever someone female there turns 18, she turns into a lesbian vampire, and they're very honest about the intentions of that movie, where they say, I am going to turn you into a lesbian vampire, and it's, you know, all about boobs and blood, except for the blood in this movie just looks like cum. So it's just ridiculous, and it's very funny.
It sounds really woke as well. Really woke.
It is in true James Corden fashion. When he was thinking about doing the Frozen carpool karaoke, he showed him his scenes where there's just cum flying all over his face and lesbian vampire killers. Well, awesome. Well, I think we should wrap this up. Where can what's the name of your new movie that you're working on now?
Eating Miss Campbell. So Eating Miss Campbell, we kind of need to do reshoots because we did principal photography in January of last year, and then obviously the pandemic happened, and so we kind of need to get around to that this year, and it should be out next year, hopefully. Troma have the North American rights, which is great. It stars Lawrence Harvey again, who's in My Bloody Banjo and the Human Centipede films. It stars Vito Trigo, who is also in Return to Nuke Em High. He's a fantastic actor, one of my best friends. It also has Blade Braxton as the Midnight Rose in Eating Miss Campbell, and that should be the sole reason why anyone should watch that film, because he steals the fucking show. And you know what's great about soundtracks, just to kind of wrap this up, but Troma put me in touch with Twisted, the rap duo that used to be on ICP's label. So I've got Twisted on the soundtrack, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
It is really cool. And I also have Vetus. You know, the teenage dirtbag guys?
Yeah. That's
awesome. The soundtrack. How cool is that?
That's awesome.
Man.
I can't wait to see it, if it's anything like Bloody Banjo.
Yeah, dude, it's kind of like a semi-sequel to My Bloody Banjo, but I can't call it My Bloody Banjo 2 because My Bloody Banjo didn't sell like shit. So I'm like, call it Eating Miss Campbell, and people will discover, spoilers, that is kind of a sequel. So
awesome. And where can people follow you online?
Yeah, dude. I mean, I'm pretty much like on all social media, and you know, just anyone that wants to make films, if you want any advice or anything, please, drop me a message, because when I was before I did Banjo, no one ever told me the truth apart from Lloyd. Filmmakers are too proud, right? They don't want to tell you about their failures. A lot of them just, like the idea of being a filmmaker. But the idea of being a filmmaker is just entertaining people and putting in long hours and, whatever. And anyone can make a film. If I can make a film, you can make a film, right? It doesn't matter how much money. Anyone can make a film. So if anyone has any questions or whatever, please feel free to pester me. I'll be more than happy to give you my story and also my advice, for what that's worth. But yeah, my name is Liam Regan, Liam Regan. I'm not related to Ronald Reagan or anything like that. It'd be kind of cool if I was. But in fact, there was someone at Troma called Ronnie Ray Gunn who worked in the
DVD department, right?
That's right. Yeah, man.
That's some Troma nerd stuff for you. I remember seeing that on the DVD credits.
Exactly, man. But no, I'm on Instagram and Twitter is Refuse Liam, REFUSE Liam. Same with Facebook. So just drop me a follow, say hi or whatever. And if you want to talk Troma, talk to me. I need more friends. My friends are dying. I need more friends. I need more trauma friends. Zach, you're my new trauma friend.
Yes. And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Lego Larry. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Talkin Troma. And everybody out there, stay traumatized.